It's Saturday night, and there's only one man who can stand up to tyranny. It's the Weekend Sit and Spin with your host, Nicholas Kelley.
Well, that's right, and welcome to the Weekend Sit and Spin, the Sit and Spin radio show. I am your host, Nicholas Kelley, coming to you live from the European studios here in Germany. And what a glorious Saturday it is. It's been kind of rainy this entire week, but we're glad to be broadcasting to you live on a sunny day. New cameras in the studio now. We're doing a few upgrades over the next weeks. And so instead of doing the show yesterday, I'm doing it today just simply because I've been trying to upgrade to an HD camera. Now there shouldn't be a lag on the video anymore. Always trying to get the podcast right where it needs to be. I feel like I've been doing this since 2010. But here we are, and there's a lot to go over today. What a strange week it's been. Now, last week, I think it's very important that I go ahead and mention that I did call, if you will remember, I did call, or call it, foresee, I foresaw the fact that there would be some shakeups in the White House. And this is not hard to understand why. I mean, frankly, Trump is getting a little nervous, in my opinion. It's getting a little hectic in the White House. And you can see why. I mean, the constant issue with Russia is enough to get anyone's blood boiling. And now that they've started going after his family as well as going after his businesses, I mean, the thing with Robert Mueller has become a complete witch hunt. We've been saying it for weeks. And this week was no exception. In fact, now they're saying that if he fires Mueller, that there should be a coup in the government. We'll get to that today. I mean, this is unbelievable that people are losing their minds over Russia collusion when other countries such as North Korea, for example, who fired off another ICBM this week, are actual real and present dangers to our society. The continued stabbings going on in Europe just highlight the fact that the radical Islamism that's going on throughout the world, the terrorism that's actually happening now. You know, George Bush declared war on terror before there was actually a breakout of this terrorist activity that's been rampant in the past decade. I mean, of course, we did have the bombings on 9/11, but do you remember before that time there being just stabbings every other week and cars running through groups of people and mass shootings on a regular basis? I mean, it seems like that has been stepped up really since the Obama administration began. Not to put the blame onto him or anything, but I'm just saying that the war on terror wasn't as necessary when George Bush started it as it seems to be today. And yet the liberal mainstream media would have you turn your focus onto Russia being a clear and present danger, when in my opinion, they really are not. And it's so strange to see our society just degrading down into this just cesspool of ignorance. Like I've said many times, it's as if we've gone back to the Cold War, which is not a position that we want to be in, especially considering that we are both superpowers. We both have nuclear capabilities. Putin does not want a war with America, not just because, and I'm not lionizing the guy. I'm not saying that he wouldn't do it because he likes us that much. He doesn't want it because it's not in his best interest. It's not in our best interest. It's not in the world's best interest to go to war. I mean, he just wants to stop the terrorism that's going on at his southern borders. He wants to calm down the Middle East. He has a vested interest in that because obviously that also secures his borders. It maintains national security for Russia as well. So really we should be joining forces, as Trump is trying to do, with Russia to be able to bring down the system of rampant terrorism that's going on. But because the focus has been shifted, because he can't continue his agenda, because the Republicans are letting us down, and let me be very clear, the Republicans are not letting down Donald Trump when they refuse to repeal Obamacare. Trump's got plenty of money. He can still buy the good private insurance that exists. I had a run-in, by the way, with private insurance. I don't want to get into that just yet, but this week I've really learned to appreciate privatized insurance, the non-state-run industry of insurance in America. Anyway, the Republicans are not letting down Donald Trump when they refuse to repeal Obamacare. And that's what it is at this point. It's a complete and utter refusal to implement the agenda of Donald Trump, simply out of spite, as far as I can tell. I mean, look at John McCain coming back into the Senate to vote against health care reform repeal. It was an outright repeal of Obamacare that they voted against. He actually came back from surgery on his brain tumor to vote down a repeal of Obamacare. I mean, is this not a little ridiculous? Because it is his constituents that voted for Donald Trump. It is the constituents of the Republican Congress who voted for Trump, who want to see his agenda put into position. And yet they refuse to do it. Most of the talking heads are saying that this will solidify their complete downfall in 2018 when we have the next cycle of congressional votes. Now, I don't want to see the Democrats run Congress, but at the same time, I would like to see an exchange of these career politicians. So in my opinion, they deserve what they get because they have refused to simply implement an agenda of America First. The next thing, of course, will be tax reform. This will be one of the largest tax reforms that we've seen in decades if they put through the agenda that the Trump administration has laid out. We'll see what happens. But it doesn't bode well for the future, the fact that they have just basically destroyed the idea of getting rid of Obamacare. Now everybody's saying it's here to stay. Forget about it. Really? Forget about it? It's here to stay? There's nothing we can do about it? After all this talk, after all of this, the complaining and the idea that it's completely tripling prices, it's destroying the industry in general, we are headed towards a one-payer system, which is terrible news. Although the thing is, there wasn't money to fund it to begin with. Obama, as I have reported on many times, had to take money from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to be able to fund it. That's come out. You can read that in mainstream news. Go Google search it. I don't have the articles here with me today. So that's how he got it funded to begin with. So it will implode, and that's what Trump is saying at this point is, look, forget about it. Let's just let it implode. Then they will come to my administration and ask for some sort of solution of how to fix the problem. And I believe that that is what will happen. It remains to be seen, but nevertheless, it is a staunch failure of the Republicans. But like I said, they're failing the American people, not Donald Trump. Nevertheless, because he can't get his agenda through, and a lot of that has to do with this diversion of Russia, there's a lot of confidence being lost, I guess, or at least that's the excuse coming from the Congress, because of the leaks from the Trump administration that are rampant, because of the disclosures of, or the leaks, I guess, as well from the Mueller investigation, which have come out more and more. This week, Jared Kushner had to speak out to the media. I thought that was a really stupid thing. He should not have spoken out. I have the video. He sounds like a 5-year-old. I'm not exactly sure what Trump's getting at with Jared Kushner. I don't really understand where this person has come from. I mean, I understand that it's Ivanka's husband. I get it. Maybe he's a great guy or whatever. I don't know him. But to me, as much as I tout not wanting to have career politicians around, the guy is very liberal. He seems extremely inexperienced. No, I don't want career politicians running the government endlessly, but it would be nice if someone with real life experience was in the office rather than some 25-year-old who happens to be married to Trump's daughter. I mean, if we had known the level of nepotism that would exist in the Trump administration going into the election, I wonder if it would have been as large of a landslide as it was. I think he still would have won. But he won by a landslide, and so many people still refuse to admit to that. I mean, the fact that there was so much rigging going on, there was so much tampering with the votes and voter fraud, we know that it exists. It's come out with Project Veritas and so many other great journalistic efforts that does exist, that there's no question that there was fraud in the direction of Hillary Clinton, and yet she still lost the election. So he would have won either way, but would it have been as large of a landslide? Would so many people have been behind him had they realized that Ivanka and Jared Kushner would become such a large part of his administration? I think it's a good question. I did not vote for Jared Kushner. I did not vote for Ivanka Trump. I have no interest in seeing these two being the head of the Trump administration. Now, that being said, I think Bannon himself is also a bit of a screw-up. I mean, I like his policies in general. I think that he and Trump are aligned on a lot of the agendas that they talk about. Of course, Breitbart News is a big source of news for me as well. I like Breitbart, even though they are, of course, spun to one direction. I still believe that direction is conservatism, is on the side of libertarianism, which is where I stand. They believe in the republic. He believes in the republic, but I think the guy also is a little bit too hard-headed. I think he's a little bit too set in his ways and maybe not open-minded enough to be the consultant that Trump needs right now. And what is that consultant? I don't know. And that's the real question. I mean, who at this point can go in and help Trump? Because we just want him to be himself. We don't want other people's agendas leaking through, bleeding through into Trump's words day in and day out. For example, Jared Kushner. Once they got involved, suddenly Trump was very pro-Silicon Valley, even though I would still like to see some trust busting going on, especially with Amazon. Bezos sat briefly as the richest man in the world this week. That remains to be questioned, although I think the Justice Department is going to get on top of that. Nevertheless, we didn't see that worship of the Silicon Valley coming through until Ivanka and Jared really got into the White House. We heard a lot of, now Trump has not echoed this, but of course we did hear a lot of immigrant apologetic conversation towards immigrants from Ivanka. We talked about that a few months ago. So I didn't vote for these policies. I voted for the ones that Donald Trump laid out during his campaign, and that's what I want to see implemented by his administration. And I don't know who the right person is for the job to help him get that done, because at this point, it seems like it's a revolving door of people who can't really seem to step up to the plate. I don't know why he doesn't bring Roger Stone back in. Michael Savage offered to be a part of that administration. He was pretty buddy-buddy for a while. I'm not sure why he won't take him up on that offer. But Trump needs to get the right people in office, and he needs to do it now. And I, like I said, talked about the possible shakeups last week that we would see. Those have begun, because this week, Reince Priebus is out, Scaramucci is in. Now, who is this Scaramucci guy? Well, he's a New York financier. He's another one of Trump's very rich friends. I don't have a problem with rich people running the government. I think that we need to balance the budget. I think that's one of Trump's goals, and he's hoping that this tax reform and the return of manufacturing, which is still on the rise, by the way. There's headlines every week talking about the fact that more and more companies are deciding to stay. More and more companies have decided to bring manufacturing back to the States. I think it's great. Without Trump in position, had Hillary Clinton been in place, we would not see that type of a return of our economy. And that's a big point that I think people need to keep in mind when they're being so critical of Trump. I wrote a book, Trumping Imperialism, asking the liberals to please take a collective breath, because we're so out of our minds. We're so over the top at this point with the Russia talks and with the social diversions and with the social division that we're forgetting about the main point here. We didn't vote Trump in because we wanted someone to stand up there and look pretty. We didn't vote him in because we wanted someone who was going to make us feel good and do ESPN brackets once a year. That's what we had with Obama. We voted in Trump because we wanted somebody who was going to get some business done, who was going to balance the budget, who was going to take on the Federal Reserve, who was going to give us some tax reforms and bring back the healthcare industry. And that's what Trump is trying to do. So we need to remember that the economy is coming back. I mean, the stock markets, regardless of the loss of confidence by Congress and the constant bashing of Trump in the mainstream media, the markets are still adding trillions week after week. I mean, it's really unbelievable the increase that we've seen in the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ over and over and over again, and it's getting better and better. I mean, people are really getting rich off of Trump. Bannon's calling for taxing the rich once again, by the way, this week, which also is a mistake because that just means the government's going to tax small business owners and business owners throughout America, which is a mistake. These people need to get on board with the Trump agenda, not their own agendas. And I feel like that the problem with the people he's put into his administration is that they all have their own agenda. They're all after their own book deals. They're all after their own end games, rather than being in it for the country, which is what Trump is for, which is why Trump went into office, because he wants to make America great again. Can we say that's what Kellyanne Conway wants? Is that really what Steve Bannon wants? That's definitely not what Reince Priebus wanted. I mean, he was an establishment troll from the very beginning. That was never a question in my mind. And so what we see now is this Anthony Scaramucci, who has already made a big flub, in my opinion, because he went to the New Yorker and was extremely vulgar during his interview, which makes the Trump administration look very bad. I'm not sure what he was after or what he was thinking when he did such a thing, but he's done it. It's over and done with at this point. We have to move on. I want to move on as well. That's my opening monologue, if you want to call it, because I need to get down to some actual news today. There's a lot that's happened this week. As you know, we are a week in review, so we want to start back on Monday. There was an article that came out talking about how the flow of asylum seekers into Canada has increased under Trump. Now, I think it was last week I talked about how the border crossers have declined in percentage since the Trump administration began as well. In fact, since he became the actual president back in 2016, before he even actually was in office, we saw a decline in the percentage of people crossing the borders. And the Border Patrol was put back into place, of course, and they've been heralding the efforts of Donald Trump because finally they can get a little bit of relief. I mean, part of the problem with Obama is that they were overwhelmed. They didn't have enough resources or manpower to handle that flood that came through. Obama refused to bolster any of those resources. Instead, he was shipping our money to foreign governments to arm radicals. Instead of arming our Border Patrol and giving them the resources and manpower they needed, he was arming radical terrorists in the Middle East in order to overthrow and topple regimes in the Arab Spring. But that's beside the point. In fact, he also, with Eric Holder, armed the drug cartels and sent the immigrants or the refugees forward into America in the first place. It seems to me that he was trying to overwhelm the Border Patrol, but nevertheless, once they were overwhelmed, then he told them to stand down. So now that Trump's put them back into place, they don't need as many resources anymore because the percentage of people trying to get across the border has declined. Well, now we also see it on the other end of it. Not that I would ever want to force our problems on another country, but a lot of them who are in the country right now are evidently heading forward or heading north into Canada as well. It says here in Reuters, many asylum seekers say they left the United States because they feared deportation in light of President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. It's out of Toronto. The number of asylum seekers walking across the border into Canada rose in June after dropping in the previous 2 months, according to government figures released on Friday. There were 884 refugee claimants who crossed the border between formal crossing and were picked up by Royal Canadian Mounted Police last month, bringing the total for the first half of 27 to 4,345 is what the data showed. The vast majority, 88% of June's crossers, went to the province of Quebec, a marked contrast from the previous months, where upwards of 100 a month went to the Prairie province of Manitoba. Many asylum seekers whom Reuters has spoken to said they left the United States because they feared deportation in light of Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. So, as you can see, it's having a very large effect on these people. And they are illegals, by the way. I mean, I want to make this very clear. I'm not against immigrants in any way, shape, or form. And I love watching these interviews that like Tucker Carlson will have. He has some great interviews in the evenings, if you've never watched his show, with a lot of Democrats, with a lot of liberals, and one of them was someone who was talking about how Trump is now going after the MS-13 gang. It's been a major growing problem for quite some time, the gang violence, and he talked in his campaign that he was going to put an end to it. He talked in his campaign that he was going to go to war with the gangs, and he mentioned it this week as well. He had a speech where he talked about how they're not just murderers. I mean, they're psychopaths. I mean, they don't just kill people. They torture them. They kill them slowly so that it's more painful because somehow that gets them off or whatever. It's really disgusting. Well, Trump is going after these people. He's using his Justice Department to really crack down on the gang violence. These are all things that the Obama administration never had any real focus on, never wanted to bring to light because he wanted to let everybody in America think that everything was awesome. He was constantly talking about how everything was great, everyone needed to just calm down, what's the big deal, America is wonderful. Well, Donald Trump is a realist. He has come to the office saying to the American people, here are the problems, the economy's in the toilet, we have gang violence throughout the country that's increasing rapidly, we have a drug problem, we have an opioid problem, we have an immigration issue where we have illegal immigrants coming across the border who are criminals. And like I said, the guy was saying that his attack on MS-13 somehow showed that he was not a advocate of immigration, that he believed that immigrants were the downfall of the country. The liberals like to confuse the issue, in my opinion here. Immigrants are not the issue. We have an immigration policy, and it's a fantastic immigration policy. It's difficult to get in the country, but nobody ever said that it should be easy. Just because you want to come here doesn't mean you can do so freely at your will. We have to make sure that you fit in with our society, that you want to be a part of our culture and adapt into it. Not that you're going to come assimilate us, but that you're going to incorporate yourself into society and fit into our culture. That's what immigration is all about, that you didn't necessarily care for the surroundings you were in. You felt that the place you were didn't represent the values that you wanted to see day in and day out, so you want to go somewhere where you can have more opportunities or more culture that better fits to what you want your way of life to be or whatever. I mean, that's what immigration is. So we can't just let you in. There has to be a vetting process. There has to be a process that says, okay, we accept you. Otherwise, why do corporations have interviews at all? Why don't they just hire the first 10 people that apply to jobs? Why do clubs have... I mean, think about this. I was never in a fraternity, but why is there a rushing practice? Why are there interviews in jobs? I mean, all of these are the same concept, that you don't just bring people in because they say they want to come. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. You have to make sure that they are dedicated, that they're committed to what they're taking on, that they're ready for such a thing. I mean, it's the same thing of letting, instead of letting 5-year-olds go into the workforce, we put them through school so they can become educated, so that we can make sure they're ready for life. I mean, I could go on with these analogies, but that's what the immigration process is about. And so Donald Trump is not against immigrants, okay? He's against illegal immigrants who have come into the country illegally. That makes them criminals. When you engage in illegal activity, you are a criminal. When you speed down the road at 100 miles an hour in a 65-mile-an-hour zone, you're a criminal. Whether you get away with it or not is completely besides the point. You are breaking the law. A criminal is someone who breaks the law. It's a very simple definition. And I don't understand why people can't see past this propaganda that's being thrown into the mix by the liberal agenda, which says, oh, so you don't want immigrants in the country because they're really hardworking. We have some great immigrants in this country. Immigrants built this country. Well, of course they did, but those immigrants immigrated legally, okay? They came in by illegal means. We don't want people just crossing the border, not paying taxes, and being handed out benefits that my taxes pay for by the government. That is ridiculous. And this is what has to stop. This is what has to come to a stop. And Donald Trump is trying to do this now. It says here, once in Canada, they are detained and held for questioning and security screening before being allowed to file refugee claims. However, time spent in the United States may put them at a disadvantage. The influx of border crossers is part of a rising number of refugee claimants in Canada, with 2017 on track to have the highest number of claims since at least 2011. The highest numbers are contributing to worsening delays in refugee hearings. The Canadian government has resisted calls to stop turning asylum seekers back at land border crossings under the Canada-U.S. Safe Third Country Agreement, which advocates say the reason so many are crossing illegally. It's unbelievable. And now they're having the same issue that we were to begin with. So the question is, how many immigrants are actually in this country? The liberals, of course, would have you believe that there are 10,000, 15,000 at most, which is completely ridiculous because there are much, much more than that. In fact, there are, or not 10,000, I'm sorry, 10 million. There's more like 80 million in this country illegally, which is why we see such a downturn in the economy, because so many people are coming into the country and being allowed to work. The government has given out tons of these H-1B visas. We have Americans out of work in some cases because they're lazy and they don't want to be at work. I think that Ben Carson was correct when he said what he said. But nevertheless, some are out of work simply because jobs are hiring more illegal immigrants because the government gives them benefits to do so, because they are allowed to give out smaller salaries because of that. I have some information from Breitbart about this as well, which I think is extremely interesting because, like I said, they would have you believe that there's a lot less in the country than there actually are. And I think that articles such as this one about Canada really highlights how many people are actually here, because now Canada's having a major issue with so many people crossing the border. DHS has reported that 2.6 million H-1B foreign workers approved to enter U.S. in the last decade. Now, they're not necessarily here illegally, so I want to make sure that I'm clear about this. But nevertheless, it highlights the fact that we do have an immigration problem. More than 2.6 million H-1B foreign guest worker visas have been approved by the U.S. federal government over the last decade. New data from the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services reveals. Every year, more than 100,000 foreign workers are brought to the U.S. on the H-1B visa. Most recently, that number ballooned to potentially hundreds of thousands each year as universities and nonprofits are exempt from the cap. With more entering the U.S. through the visa, American workers are often fired and forced to train their foreign replacement. The U.S. CIS data shows that between 2007 and 2017, the H-1B visa, which imports foreign workers to take American jobs, the program has grown exponentially. The vast majority of visa holders are from India. In the last decade, U.S. companies tried to outsource nearly 3.5 million American jobs to foreign workers through the H-1B visa. Of those, officials in the U.S. government approved 2.63 million applicants for foreign workers to come to this country. In 2016 alone, former President Obama's last full year in office, almost 350,000 foreign workers were approved to be imported to take American jobs. In the process, U.S. workers who have spoken to Breitbart Texas in the past were replaced. Despite the H-1B visa programs being touted by big business elites and the open borders lobby as a way to diversify the U.S. workforce, roughly 70 to 80% of the foreign workers imported every year are from India. Pro-American worker advocates' assertions that the H-1B visa is discriminatory towards older Americans specifically are backed up by the latest data. The overwhelming majority of the foreign workers coming to the U.S. on the H-1B visa, who often replace older American workers, are between the ages of 25 and 34 years old. Donald Trump has yet to end the reform the H-1B visa to protect American workers, but he has called for a full legal review of the program headed by the Department of Justice, the Labor Department, and also the Department of Homeland Security. So Trump is getting to work on this, and like I said, that's why the distraction from his agenda is so ridiculous, because he is trying to put his Justice Department to work to figure out the legality of all of these programs, to figure out why there's so much money being pumped into these programs, because that's a lot of money going in to bring in foreign workers rather than getting Americans back to work, which, again, is part of the economic problem. When you have people in the country not paying taxes, and yet they're working and putting other people out of work, even older Americans who could probably work in many, many cases, but are forced out of their jobs to make way for foreign workers who the government allows the companies to pay a lower salary. And that's really what it's all about. They get benefits, they're allowed to pay out that lower salary, and so for them, it means higher profit margin. That's why you have people like Mark Zuckerberg talking about how great it is to have immigrants in the country and how hard workers they are. None of that's true. I mean, there may be some hard workers in the group, but that's not why Zuckerberg wants them. That's not why Disney's bringing them in. And I also, as much as I'm a big fan of Disney, they are one of the culprits of this. Okay, yes, for temporary workforce, maybe it's a great solution, but there are so many Americans out of work, and this is something else that Donald Trump wants to tackle, which also brings into question why Trump is being so aggressive against Jeff Sessions when his Justice Department is the one that's doing a lot of this great work. For example, going after the MS-13 gangs, doing legal reviews of the H-1B visa program, and so on and so on. Okay, let's move on because there's more to cover here. Jared Kushner speaks for the first time to the public. Now, I thought this was a really stupid idea. Again, I have to wonder who exactly is advising Donald Trump. There's the word I've been looking for this entire episode. Who is advising Donald Trump? Because there's a lot of bad decisions being made. For example, having Jared Kushner go out and speak in public to anybody. I mean, he didn't need to do that. No one asked him to do that. I think the country was better off without him doing that, because now we know what he sounds like. Now we know that he's a 5-year-old and that he's very inexperienced. And then he didn't take any questions. He turned his back on the media and walked off camera. Look, Jared Kushner is not the president. He doesn't have the right to not take questions, especially when tensions are so high. But he had talked to the Senate Intelligence Committee, and then he went out in the press and spoke to them as well. We have the video. I think it's good if we take a listen to Jared Kushner.
My name is Jared Kushner. I am Senior Advisor to President Donald J. Trump. When my father-in-law decided to run for president, I served his campaign the best I could because I believe in him and his ability to improve the lives of all Americans. And now, serving the president and the people of the United States has been the honor and privilege of a lifetime. I am so grateful for the opportunity to work on important matters such as Middle East peace and reinvigorating America's innovative spirit. Every day, I come to work with enthusiasm and excitement for what can be. I have not sought the spotlight. First in business and now in public service, I have always focused on setting and achieving goals and have left it to others to work on media and public perception. Since the first questions were raised in March, I have been consistent in saying that I was eager to share any information I have with the investigating bodies, and I've done so today. The record and documents I have voluntarily provided will show that all of my actions were proper and occurred in the normal course of events of a very unique campaign. Let me be very clear. I did not collude with Russia, nor do I know of anyone else in the campaign who did so. I had no improper contacts.
I did not have Russian
collusions with that
country.
I have not relied on Russian funds for my businesses.
I did not leave stains on that country's
in providing
dress.
all requested information.
I have
Donald
been completely
Trump
honest.
had a better
No,
message
I mean, but this,
and
is
ran
this not what
a
this sounds
smarter
like? I mean, listen to
campaign,
this guy.
and that is why he won.
Why is this guy
Suggesting
working in the
otherwise
highest
ridicules
office
those
in the country?
who voted for him.
Why is this guy working for Donald
It is
Trump?
an honor to work with
To
President
me, he
Trump
sounds like a child.
and his administration.
He looks like
as we
he
take on the
rolled in
challenges
here on his little
that he was
tyke
elected to face.
and walked in.
Creating
He's got like a
jobs
suit
for
on that
American
makes it look
people,
like it's Easter Sunday
keeping
with
America
the parents, and
safe,
they've dressed him
and
up
eliminating
so he can take pictures with
barriers
the family.
to achieving
I mean, this
the
guy
American
looks
dream.
like a complete retard.
Thank you very
I'm
much,
sorry.
and I look forward to taking
watch
questions
here, watch here.
from the House committee tomorrow. Thank you.
Turned his back on the media, did not take a single question. Now, is this the kind of activity, the kind of behavior? I'm a little slow with my words today. Is this the kind of behavior that you want coming from the administration in the White House? Because he should have stood there and took a few questions. I'm sorry. I thought that what he did there was wrong. I mean, whatever. He didn't need to speak to the public to begin with. But once he did, he should have taken a few questions. He should have at least acted like he was representing the people, representing the administration who represents the people in some way. I'm sorry. I thought it was really dumb to have him go out there and speak at all. I am glad that he released all his information, I guess, to the Intelligence Committee, but the way he spoke, I mean, that speech made it seem like he was guilty, right? I mean, I don't think that he is. I don't believe that there was any collusion whatsoever, and I don't think that this means that there is any actual evidence of collusion at all. But, I mean, just to be clear, the way he said what he said, to me, did not sound so great. If I had been advising Donald Trump, I would have said, Trump, look, buddy, I think that we probably just need to leave him off camera. I mean, he hadn't spoken till now. It was the whole Jared Kushner thing was mysterious. And now it seems to me like he's just kind of the grandkid of Trump. I know he's not. He's the son-in-law. But he's so young in comparison to Donald Trump. Doesn't he seem like it's the grandchild telling his grandpa what movie to go see on the weekend because he's too old to be into that sort of thing? I mean, that's the kind of feeling, that's the vibe I take away from this Kushner guy. I just don't like him. All right, I want to talk a little bit about this here as well. Gas prices fall to 12-year low. Schumer claims that gas prices never go down. People hate it when their cable bills, airline fees go up. Even as gas prices have fallen to the lowest point in years under President Trump, Senate Majority Leader is claiming the price of petrol has only gone up. The nationwide price for gas closed the week of July 17th at $2.39 a gallon, down from $2.47 a gallon when Trump took office. Over the July 4th holiday weekend, gas prices were at their lowest point since 2005, according to AAA. Here's a quote: at $2.23, today's average national gas prices, the cheapest the country has seen all year. AAA reported on the week, gas prices fell in 46 states. Only Illinois, Oklahoma, and Washington, D.C. saw prices increase, albeit by 1 cent each, while Hawaii and Maine remained flat. South Carolina continues to carry the cheapest gas in the country at $1.90. Man, I tell you, I wish I was home right now, could be paying those cheap gas prices. And when you want to talk about expensive gas, I mean, I think that Americans are still a little, well, not a little, I mean, we are very spoiled when it comes to cheap gas. Of course, it has to do with supply and demand. There's more cars here. There are more people over here than in Europe. And so the gas is cheaper because there's more of a demand for it. It's economics. But nevertheless, living here in Germany has shown me once again just how blessed we are to have such cheap gas, because here they don't do it by the gallon, the base price anyway. It's by the liter. Of course, there's about almost 3 liters in a gallon or whatever. So it's about here, I think, last time I looked, I haven't looked recently, but I think it was $2.47, $2.50, somewhere around in there, a liter. So it legitimately is, compared to some states, about 3 times the price here as it is in America, which is one of the reasons why you see the attempted ban now on gasoline engines in Europe, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. Chuck Schumer, however, appearing on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, claimed Sunday the prices are only rising thanks to huge companies buying up other big companies. Gas prices are sticky, you know, when the domestic price goes when the price for oil goes up on the markets, it goes right up, but it never goes down. I think it might be best if we play
with the American people.
What are you going to propose that Donald Trump can sign on to? Without his support, you're not. This isn't going anywhere.
Well, we are going to propose tomorrow. We've already proposed a few things. $1 trillion infrastructure plan. Trump, I don't know where he is on infrastructure, but we're willing to work with him on that. We've proposed already a $15 minimum wage. Trump won't go for that. We've proposed a child care, a family leave proposal that works well. Here's what we're going to propose tomorrow. Number one, we're going to go after the drug companies. We will create a special office that will just go after these drug companies when they raise prices so egregiously and people can't afford these drugs. We're going to change the way companies can merge. We have these huge companies buying up other big companies. It hurts workers and it hurts prices. The old Adam Smith idea of competition, it's gone. So people hate it when their cable bills go up, their airline fees. They know that gas prices are sticky, you know, when the domestic price goes, when the price for oil goes up on the markets, it goes right up, but it never goes down. How the heck did we let Exxon and Mobil merge? And that was Democrats. You know, inflation. So we're going to go after that, and that will help the average person lower their costs. And finally, we're going to have tomorrow a very novel idea of how to create 10 million jobs. There are 10 million Americans looking for good-paying jobs. We're going to show them how to find them. And that's just the beginning. Week after week, month after month, we're going to roll out specific pieces here that are quite different than the Democratic Party you heard in the past. We were too cautious. We were too namby-pamby. This is sharp, bold, and will appeal to both the old Obama coalition, let's say the young lady who's just getting out of college, and the Democratic voters who deserted us for Trump, the blue-collar worker.
Some may wonder.
Economics, George, is our strength.
Some may wonder if it's going to go at it. Bold enough. I mean, even your New York colleague, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand.
So, as you can see, the Democrats, once again, are just simply oblivious to what's really going on. But nevertheless, I think it bodes well for, again, the economy under Trump is chugging along. It's moving up the hill, regardless of all of the distractions, regardless of all of the pushback from the mainstream media, from the Democrats themselves. Nevertheless, the question is, why can't Republicans seem to get it together? I mean, the Democrats may be in complete chaos in terms of being able to get back into power, in terms of being able to provide some sort of united front, although they did come out with this better deal. I mean, they've gone all the way back to was it FDR now or whatever, the New Deal, That's what they've generated now, because they didn't have a message, and the main criticism against the Democrats was the fact that they didn't have a party message. And so now they're saying, well, we have a new deal. Trump wants to give you a good deal. We have a new one. Or, I'm sorry, not a new deal. I'm losing it. A better deal. Trump wants to give you a good deal. We have a better one. Nobody knows what that deal is other than getting Trump out of office. I guess that's what their better deal is all about, is just simply bringing Trump down, which they've been trying to do since the very beginning. But even with all of that, the question is, why can't the Republicans get together? You think that they would be using this time of such a slump in Democratic prowess to be passing the agendas of Trump, to be uniting and rolling back Obama agendas instead of Trump having to do it all himself. Because at the end of the day, Republicans are in full control of the government, but they seem to be losing control of their party, and that's exactly the headline from the Washington Post this week. 6 months after seizing complete control of the federal government, the Republican Party stands as divided as ever, plunged into a messy war among its factions that has escalated in recent weeks to crisis levels. Evidently frustrated lawmakers are increasingly sounding off at a White House awash in turmoil and struggling to accomplish its legislative goals. President Trump is scolding Republican senators over health care and even threatening electoral retribution. Congressional leaders are losing the confidence of the rank and file, and some major GOP donors are considering using their wealth to try to force out recalcitrant incumbents. That's a fun word there.
You know, you listen to Schumer.
You can listen to Donald Trump.
And before he even knew what the plan said, he didn't see it. Most of the people in this room never saw it. And he was saying, death, everyone's going to die, death, death, death. That's the only thing they're good at. And this is a great plan. This isn't just a good plan. This is far better than Obamacare and more generous than Obamacare. Saving Medicaid, which is on an really unsustainable path, and let states spend those dollars freely. So the states are going to be able to spend the dollars. And as a smaller entity, the states will be able to take better care of a person with a bad back, with a bad prognosis, with a problem. I'd like the federal government to focus on the Middle East, to focus on North Korea, to focus on things where we have very big problems. The states can do a better job than the federal government when it comes to health care. And that's what we're letting you do.
So you can hear Trump there giving a hard time to the lawmakers, which he should be doing. The intensifying fights threaten to derail efforts to overhaul the nation's tax laws and other initiatives that GOP leaders hope will put them back on track. The party remains bogged down by a months-long health care endeavor that still lacks the support to become law, which has now been officially killed, although Senate GOP leaders plan to vote in it this week, and they did, and thanks to John McCain, it did not come to fruition, which in my opinion is completely just ridiculous and pathetic. I can't believe that they simply cannot get together on being able to do something good for this country. Like Trump said, this is a better deal, and even though the Democrats want to provide something else, you think the Republicans could at least pass something. They spent all this time talking about health care, and then they came up with the idea that if we can't reform it, we can at least repeal it and reform it later. And then John McCain nearly single-handedly killed that one as well. So starting on Tuesday, Sessions went in the doghouse with Donald Trump. And it is, will the Republicans start a civil war over Sessions after that? Because I don't really know what Trump is thinking going after Jeff Sessions, because he's a good man, he's an excellent lawmaker, he's a very smart individual, he's been behind the Trump agenda since the very beginning. If anybody is on the side of Donald Trump, of course it is Jeff Sessions. However, the problem is that he did recuse himself from this whole Russia situation, which is the reason why Donald Trump is so upset with him about this issue. because he should have never done that. I agree with Trump that he shouldn't have done that. I'm not sure what he was thinking. He was advised himself to do that, and I have a video just after we go through this where he says that he still thinks he did the right thing. He should have informed Trump about it before he did it. He should have at least talked with Trump. He should have at least consulted with Trump before he just went behind his back and completely recused himself. Like I said last week, Trump needs Jeff Sessions at his side right now with this whole Russia thing, but he can't be. And this is why Robert Mueller got put into position, which now people are calling for a coup if Trump gets rid of Mueller, which in my opinion is what he needs to do, because I think the whole Mueller issue is nothing more as well than just a distraction. Trump messes with Sessions, and Senate Republicans are not pleased. This comes out of McClatchy, D.C. President Donald Trump is getting a bitter Washington lesson when he messes with Jeff Sessions. You don't pick a fight with one of the Senate's guys. It's a lesson that could cost him politically in the Senate, where he needs Republican support for his lengthy agenda. I don't understand it. Quote, "There's no more honorable person than I've met in my life than Jeff Sessions." That comes from Senator Inhofe, Republican in Oklahoma, is a close friend of Sessions. "The only person who is more upset with Trump about this than me is my wife." Sessions spent 20 years in the Senate, winning a reputation for affability and party loyalty. He understood and doggedly practiced the code of what's been called the world's most exclusive club. You can disagree without being disagreeable, but you protect the institution and its members. Trump clearly doesn't play by those rules. The president took to Twitter to call Sessions beleaguered and questioned why the Attorney General wasn't investigating Trump's 2016 Democratic presidential rival, Hillary Clinton. That was Monday, and by Tuesday morning, he doubled down. Quote, "Attorney General Jeff Sessions has taken a very weak position on Hillary Clinton crimes. Where are emails and DNC server and intel leakers?" Trump raised similar questions over the weekend, days after telling reporters in an interview that he had second thoughts about nominating Sessions because the former Alabama senator had recused himself from the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Now, like I said, frankly, I agree with Trump. I don't really understand why Jeff Sessions decided to do this behind his back. I don't know who advised him to do such a thing. But I think we can also see a little bit of a hint. Now, I like that Trump tweets. I think that it is the way that he continues to reach the American people. I think without this in position, unless he's going to a rally and giving more speeches, which I also love. I think he's a great speech maker, the Winston Churchill of our time, and the speeches he gives have been phenomenal since he took office. But he can't simply do a speech every day. I mean, he can't go to a different state and do a different speech every single day. He would never get anything done. So, in my opinion, tweeting is the only way he can really reach the American people. We've talked about the fact that clearly those in his administration do not agree with his agenda to the extent that they are 100% behind it. They have their own agendas. They have their own reasons for being there. They all want their own book deals. And so getting his message out through those people, not to say they're not qualified, not to say that they aren't good spokesmen in general for the White House, but clarifying his agenda, clarifying the things that he wants to say to the American people is easiest when he does it simply himself. And given the establishment that sits around him, tweeting is about the only way he can do it. So I love his videos that he does from the White House. We have one today to watch. He does them weekly. I love his tweets. But why he's tweeting against Jeff Sessions instead of just going to him and saying, go after Hillary Clinton. Now, he did, and maybe this is part of the, maybe this gives us a little light into what's coming next, and maybe that's why he tweeted it. I mean, Trump is always being strategic. But for him to tweet that Jeff Sessions has taken a weak position on Hillary Clinton is a little beyond me. For him to tweet about him being upset about Jeff Sessions recusing himself is a little beyond me, because we're all aware of that fact. It sounds to me like he needs to bring Sessions into his office and sit him down and have a talk one-on-one, rather than being continuing to tweet about it. So again, I'm not sure what we're going to see going forward. The White House administration in the press room and so forth continues to say that Sessions, that he has confidence in Sessions. I think Sessions is doing some great work, especially when it comes to things like MS-13. But it's hard to be able to tell what's coming next because these attacks on the AG are continuing and shakeups are happening actively in the White House, especially after the hiring of Scaramucci. Nevertheless, record highs are still going forward in Wall Street. As I said, S&P closes at record high as earnings beat the street. Caterpillar and McDonald's posted bottom line results that topped estimates, sending its shares higher. This is the busiest week of the earnings seasons with approximately 180 S&P 500 components scheduled to report. Wall Street also set its sights on the Federal Reserve as the central bank kicked off a two-day monetary policy meeting. U.S. stocks closed higher on Tuesday after a slew of major companies reported better than expected quarterly results. The S&P 500 rose 0.3% to hit intraday and closing records, with financials, materials, and energy rising more than 1% to lead advancers. The index closed at 2,477.
It was a cross-border acquisition of a very large size, and it doesn't happen every day.
Coming from Wall Street, and like I said, confidence in the economy continues to rise, regardless of all of these other distractions, even with Trump's distractions of his own making, such as going after Jeff Sessions when, in my opinion, he probably shouldn't be, and I simply don't understand what he's thinking. But we can see the confidence being shown in the American people as well. Pickup in confidence shows Americans upbeat on jobs and the economy. That's coming out of Bloomberg. Scott Landman says a 4-month high in U.S. consumer confidence reflects Americans' sunnier views on both their current situation and outlook, a positive sign for the economy. Data from the New York-based Conference Board showed on Tuesday. With unemployment near a 16-year low and U.S. stocks reaching record highs, consumers remain upbeat, which should continue to support the household spending that accounts for about 70% of U.S. gross domestic product. Even so, the post-election surge in sentiment has yet to translate into a similar economic boost. Faster wage gains and improved prospects for fiscal stimulus could propel confidence further in coming months. The Conference Board's data contrasts with surveys from the University of Michigan and Bloomberg's Consumer Comfort Index showing sentiments ebbing in recent weeks as well. So, I'm very confident in the economy. I think that that confidence is echoed throughout the entire country. And hopefully, we can see a dial back of this Russia issue. I mean, maybe what Jared Kushner did will go a long way to come out. I mean, that was the big news in the past few weeks, was this whole meeting that he had, which also was completely ridiculous. But now I think it shows that he took that meeting, nothing came from it, nothing illegal was done with the Russian attorney or whatever. It turned out she was a complete Democratic operative, but that's besides the point. He came out, he released all his information, he gave a speech to the public. Things seem to have calmed down since then. It is a witch hunt. I think there is a lot of issues with the people that Mueller has hired. I think there's a lot of conflicts of interest there. I still can't really get over the fact that all of the attorneys he's hired for this investigation are Democratic donors, people who have donated specifically to the Hillary Clinton campaign as well as the Clinton Foundation. So it is a witch hunt, and they are going into his business. But things seem to have calmed down since Jared Kushner spoke to the public, even though I still think that was a bad idea. And so we'll see in the coming months what actually ends up coming from this Russia collusion topic, because that seems to be what everybody's focused on. Even Stephen Colbert went to Russia and stayed in the hotel that supposedly sparked the dossier of Trump that was completely fake. I mean, these things are crazy, but they come from the continued leaks, which seem to be never ending. Now, this is something that Scaramucci says specifically he is going after. And this is also what sparked the story from the New Yorker, was Scaramucci saying that he was going after the leakers. And then he himself went to the New Yorker and gave out private information about his thoughts about the administration, the people that he thought were the people doing the leaking. I mean, the guy, I don't know, again, what is going on in this administration? The bad decisions being perpetuated from the White House are unbelievable. And it continues to beg the question that I said at the beginning of the show: who is the best person to come in and advise this president? I mean, Anthony Scaramucci is a smart guy, a good businessman. It's funny because they have now made comparisons to him and the Futurama guy from the 80s who had bonitis. If you've seen the episode, you know what I'm talking about. But he is relatively like this. He reminds me of this Wolf of Wall Street 80s sly business guy. I mean, that's kind of what he reminds me of. And I'm not sure if that's the kind of person. Again, I'm against career politicians. And so I like that Trump is kind of thinking outside of the box, but some of these people just seem to be coming out of the woodwork. I mean, he's a hedge fund operator, which is who Trump likes to surround himself with. But he came out and immediately starting to threaten to fire everybody in order to stop the White House leaks, which could be a very good idea, frankly. I mean, like I said, shakeups have been needed. Trump has been needing to take a good look at the Obama holdovers. But why Trump's not doing the firing and yet Scaramucci is also a little strange. Anyway, Politico has the story. Scaramucci threatens to fire everybody to stop White House leaks. The financier and longtime Trump surrogate, newly installed as communications director, is eager to shake up a press operation seen as loyal to Chief of Staff Reince Priebus. President Donald Trump's newly appointed communications director said Tuesday that he is prepared to fire everybody in the White House communication shop in order to put an end to embarrassing internal leaks. And they are embarrassing. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They need to stop. And it's not just embarrassing, it's a field day for the Democrats and the mainstream media, giving them more and more justification when they come out and say that this administration is not worthy of being in the White House, is very chaotic, is not capable of running the country. Because if he can't stop his own leaks, then how can he govern effectively? And it's a good question. I mean, I think that they are coming from Obama holdovers, and I think it's partially because he didn't get rid of them to begin with. But bringing in someone from the outside like Scaramucci to come in and clean house rather than just him directly doing it, I think also shows poor advisory. But anyway, President Donald Trump's, or I'm sorry, Scaramucci confirmed to Politico early Tuesday that he planned to start by dismissing Assistant Press Secretary Michael Short at a morning meeting. But that move was apparently delayed. Short, who initially said Tuesday that he hadn't yet been informed of any decision, resigned on Tuesday afternoon. Very interesting. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders issued a brief statement on Short's resignation later in the day, saying, "We are grateful for his service and wish him well." Short's ouster is Scaramucci's first warning shot to White House aides who have been perceived as disloyal to the president. If there is one thing to say about Scaramucci, he is loyal to Donald Trump. And maybe that's why Trump put him in place, because he seems to be the kind of guy who is more or less interested only in loyalty. I can't disagree with that. Clearly, he needs some loyalty at this point. Not that the White House administration needs to solely be loyal to Donald Trump. I mean, they need to be loyal to America. And if they are, then his agenda, which in my opinion is America first, would make them loyal to him. But Trump's a businessman. He demands perfection, and he wants a hierarchy within the management structure, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So we're going to give Scaramucci a shot here. We're going to see what happens. But he came out and said, "I'm going to fire everybody, and that's how I'm going to do it." He said to reporters outside of the White House on Tuesday, "You're either going to stop leaking or you're going to be fired." He claimed to have full authority of the president to clean out the communication shop and put his own stamp on the team. A source close to Scaramucci said that he's planning to bring in people from the corporate communications world in addition to conservative broadcast stars. So maybe we'll see a Michael Savage in the White House. That would be great. I think he has already said that he would go in and work with Trump's administration. There are a lot of smart people in conservative broadcasting, although we have seen Sean Hannity at the White House meeting with Trump and Scaramucci. So we'll see. Shakeups are coming. Like I said last week, it's going to be very interesting to find out who is going to be put into place to be a spokesman for Trump. I have to move quickly along because I tend to get caught up in a lot of this stuff, but there's just so much to go over. John McCain helps to destroy the repeal of Obamacare. I mentioned this earlier, but like I said, he was actually single-handedly part of the reason that it was completely killed. I mean, he came back from brain surgery to make sure that they put an end to the repeal of Obamacare, which continues, in my opinion, to show that this man is a traitor to our country. I do not like John McCain. I don't wish harm to come on him. It's always sad, I guess, to hear about brain tumors and things like that, but having a brain tumor does not re-justify his heroism. He does not have America's best interest at heart. He was seen having a barbecue with the Al-Qaeda rebels.
Senate Republicans are getting ready for a showdown
Syria
over healthcare
a couple of years ago. You can take a listen.
Trump is pressuring Republicans.
Well, this was a video from the vote on. Yeah, we don't have to play that. Time to move on from health care, Senate GOP leaders say. John McCain, I want to get back to this. John McCain was seen having a barbecue with radical Al-Qaeda terrorists when Obama was arming the rebels in Syria to try to topple Assad's regime. He, in my opinion, is a traitor and should have been taken out of office years ago, if not prosecuted. Nevertheless, the media has used this brain tumor as a way to come out and say how great of a guy he is, how great of a senator he is. His track record is absolutely horrifying. And this is just another brick in the wall here as far as I'm concerned. The resounding Senate crash to the 7-year Republican drive to scrap the Obamacare law has been finger-pointing, but also has left the party with wounded leaders and no evident way on an issue that won't go away. In an astonishing cliffhanger, the GOP-run Senate voted 51 to 49. Now, I mean, let's think about that. 2 votes on Friday to reject Mitch McConnell's last-ditch attempt to sustain their drive to dismantle President Barack Obama's health care overhaul with a starkly trimmed-down bill. The vote, which concluded shortly before 2 a.m., was a blistering defeat for Donald Trump and McConnell. Quote, they should have approved health care last night, Trump said Friday during a speech in New York, but you can't have everything. Senate Democrats were joined in opposition by 3 Republicans, Susan Collins from Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and lo and behold, John McCain of Arizona. The 80-year-old McCain, just diagnosed with brain cancer, has returned to the Capitol 3 days earlier to provide a vote that temporarily kept the measure alive, only to deliver the coup de grace on Friday. Quote, Republicans in the Senate will never win if they don't go to a 51-vote majority now. They look like fools and are just wasting time, Trump tweeted on Saturday. He said the Republican Senate, quote, must get rid of 60 votes now. It is killing the Republican Party, but on the crucial vote, a simple majority of 51, including a tiebreaker by Mike Pence, was all that was needed. And so you can see why I say that McCain almost single-handedly, I mean, there were 2 other Republicans with him who helped bring this repeal down. This is a 7-year effort. This did not begin with Trump. This began during the Obama administration. The Republicans, once they had a majority in the Senate, which they did 2 years into, halfway into Obama's term, they had a majority, and yet For 7 years, they've tried to repeal this thing, and now, even with the president behind the effort, they refuse to get it done. The question is why? The question is, what possible good could this do? They are failing the American people. They are failing their constituents. And I don't understand, because their whole goal is to stay in office, and yet it seems like they're doing everything they can to bring themselves out of office. Or maybe that's just how arrogant they are. Maybe they're counting on the fact that the American people won't vote them out, even though they continue to fail time and time again. Maybe they're trying to get a majority of constituents that are Democrats, because they want to continue to push the liberal agenda. And if they can get the rest of the country behind them, the ones that aren't conservative, they figure they can push it through quicker. I don't know. It's really, really mind-boggling. But nevertheless, the stats are there. The American people are not happy with Obamacare. It is not something that we want kept. Out of ballotpedia.org, among the nation's largest 100 cities, 66 currently allowing home sharing through services such as Airbnb with minimal regulation. What is this? This is not... Well, the stat I wanted to get to was that 15 million would opt out of Obamacare if they could. Evidently, that was the wrong article. We'll move on. But Rasmussen reported that 15 million people would opt out of Obamacare if they could. And why shouldn't they? Because it's tripling prices. The health care itself is terrible. The state-governed health care is not as quality as private insurance. And I have to say this. I was, this week, had to go to the dentist. Not because I have issues with my teeth, but I was late for a teeth cleaning. Before we came to Germany, my wife and I both had a cleaning. You should do this twice a year, by the way. I mean, a little tooth decay prevention talk for you. It's great to go get your teeth cleaned. You should floss daily, brush daily, twice a day, the whole 9 yards. But of course, go to the dentist twice a year. It's always good to get checked up. Teeth issues can cause major health issues. Anyway, I'm late because coming over here, we have insurance. We have MetLife private insurance. And from what I understand, it's supposed to be pretty good insurance. The problem is it's not state insurance. Over here they have centralized health care. They have socialist health care throughout Europe. But there are some private insurance companies. You have the ability to get private health care. The problem is they make that health care, if you have the private, if you opt for private health care, they make that more inconvenient for the customer, for the people buying the health care, which really blows my mind. And it's true, because we went to the dentist, and if you have private health care, you have to file your own claim. The doctor's office doesn't file the claim for you, as they do in America. You have to file it. You get the bill. You have to pay for that bill out of pocket, and then you have to send that money to the insurance company for them to reimburse you. Now, from what I understand, we haven't had to do this yet. They're much quicker here than they are in America with returning that money. I think in America, a lot of times when the doctor's offices file claims, it can take months for the insurance companies to send the money to them. But here, it's supposed to operate quicker. Nevertheless, the state-controlled health care, your claims are still filed by the state or by the doctor's office. So you have the same convenience offered to you with state-controlled insurance as we normally in America. Private health care is totally separate. Now, they don't treat you any differently in the doctor's office. It's just more inconvenient. I think what you pay for actually is the deductible is a little bit higher than state. Of course, we only have to do it for a year, and I haven't had any major health issues. But still, you can just tell that even from a small perspective here, that centralized healthcare is simply not as convenient, not as quality as an open insurance market. And we're seeing that because, number one, Obamacare is imploding. It doesn't have the money to continue to fund itself. People don't want it. It is putting other insurance companies out of business. When competition goes down, prices go up. That's why your costs have been tripled. And it turns out it's a tax because if you don't have health care insurance, which before Obamacare was every citizen's right to not have insurance if they didn't want it. Of course, it's not really the smartest way to go about it, but if you didn't want to have it, you didn't have to have it. So, for example, young people that are quite healthy and just simply don't want to pay money for nothing didn't have to have it. Now, if you get caught in that situation, you are taxed. On your taxes, you have to pay more money because you didn't have health care. It's completely ridiculous. All right, that's my speech about being grateful for the health care in America. We're going to move on because this week, Trump bans transgenders from the military. Now, the liberals have also completely lost their mind over this issue, which is ridiculous because before Obama, transgender people were not in the military anyway. I think it was very interesting that, who was it? One of the pop stars was tweeting about, who was it? It wasn't Christina Aguilera. It was the one on American Horror Story with the big nose. I can't think of her name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. She was tweeting about Trump not letting transgenders into the military, and it was quite funny because her tweet said, Trump, do you know how many people or how many transgender people committed suicide in the past however many years or whatever because of their issues of confidence or whatever it was. And that kind of proves Trump's point for him, which is funny that they don't realize this. We don't want people in the military who have mental health issues, who have issues of confidence, who don't necessarily believe in themselves, who aren't capable of handling themselves on a battlefield. These are people that are supposed to be ready to go into battle and protect our country. You can be rejected from the military for all sorts of reasons. I mean, if you have asthma, you can be rejected out of the military. If your body fat content is 1% too high, you can be rejected from the military. If you have certain levels of diabetes, and I mean, there are all types of health conditions because they don't want you in a situation. I mean, think about this. If you are captured, God forbid, by a opposing force or something. I mean, think about John McCain, okay? We always want to talk about such a hero he was. He was captured and tortured and held prisoner or whatever for so long. If you are in that kind of situation, the military doesn't want you to be the type of person who needs a certain regimen of medication or, for example, a certain regimen of hormones because you've gone through gender reassignment surgery. Do you think that if you get captured by an opposing force, they're going to give you the proper hormones to continue your transformation? That's not going to happen. And therefore, you become a liability. You become a distraction. And we do not want those type of people in our military. Because if that's the case, if that's what you are, it's not that that's a problem socially. I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. It's a free country, whatever. But we don't need those type of people on the battlefield. It doesn't matter if their ability. If they wanted to go in the military, then they shouldn't have tried to change their gender. It's totally ridiculous. You are a liability and a distraction from the military's cause, from what we're trying to accomplish. We don't need you in the military, and Trump is having none of it. And in my opinion, it's about time because, like I said, we didn't allow transgenders in the military before Obama. he brought it in simply as yet another social division tactic. And I hope that everybody can understand that that's all that this is. It's a way to distract society and have us divided amongst one another. Anyway, Trump says transgender people will not be allowed in the military. This is out of the New York Times. President Trump abruptly announced a ban on transgender people serving in the military on Wednesday, blindsiding his defense secretary and Republican congressional leaders with a snap decision that reversed a year-old policy reviled by social conservatives. Mr. Trump made the declaration on Twitter saying that American forces could not afford the tremendous medical cost and disruption of transgender service members. He said he had consulted generals and military experts, but Jim Mattis, the defense secretary, was given only a day's notice about the decision. Of course, they're trying to play up the fact that he did this off the cuff. I mean, he is the commander-in-chief. He can do what he wants. Mr. Trump elected to announce the ban in order to resolve a quietly brewing fight on Capitol Hill over whether taxpayer money should pay for gender transition and hormone therapy for transgender service members. The dispute had threatened to kill $790 billion defense and security spending package scheduled for a vote this week. But rather than addressing the narrow issue, Mr. Trump opted to upend the entire policy on transgender service members, which, in my opinion, is totally his prerogative. He can do it. I'm glad he did it. I think it is a distraction. I don't want my tax dollars paying for members of the military to have reassignment surgery. I think that's ridiculous. I think there's a lot of other things that could be being paid for. They don't want to give real benefits. That's the thing. They don't want to offer real benefits with your tax money, so they want to give you fake benefits that keep you distracted. I mean, how ridiculous is it that we are paying for that? It is not my job to pay for your surgery. You don't go in the military to pay for surgery. And I hate the argument that says, well, they pay for your college when you go into the military. Some people only go into the military for college, but that's educational. Why would anybody go into the military to be able to afford surgery? I mean, that's unbelievable. And, I mean, do you know what kind of mental stability it takes to be in the military? That's why I'm not in the military, because I don't want to put up with that on a daily basis. How do you think that transgendered people can do that? And, of course, we had people like Chelsea Manning and so on coming out against Trump, saying that he was a terrible person for doing this. But it's, in my opinion, is simply Trump, once again, making a good decision, making a tough decision, because, of course, he knew that there would be backlash, and getting it done. I mean, he said that he wanted to make America great again, which also means making our military great again. We're going to have to move along quite quickly here. I have more news to go over, but we're running out of time. On Friday, North Korea tests another ICBM. Now, on Thursday, we had articles saying that this was going to happen because they were readying for this. Now North Korea claims that all of the U.S. in strike range, as Trump says China has done nothing. And as we know, they haven't, although now they're talking about how they're going to have to build a wall to make themselves safe. North Korea said on Saturday it had conducted another successful test of an ICBM that proved its ability to strike America's mainland, drawing a sharp warning from U.S. President Donald Trump and rebuke from China. However, late on Saturday, Trump wrote on Twitter that he was very disappointed in China and that Beijing had done nothing for the United States in regards to North Korea, something he would not allow to continue. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un personally supervised the midnight launch of the missile on Friday night and said it was a stern warning for the United States that would not be safe from destruction if it tries to attack. The North's official KCNA news agency said that. North Korea state television broadcast pictures of the launch showing the missile lifting off in a fiery blast in darkness and Kim cheering with military aides. Quote, the test fire reconfirmed the reliability of the ICBM system, demonstrated the capability of making a surprise launch of the ICBM in any region and place any time, and clearly proved that the whole U.S. mainland is in the firing range of the DPRK missiles, Kim Jong-un said with pride. Now, this one landed in the Japanese waters once again, but it's proving that their targeting has gotten better, that their accuracy has gotten better, that their distance is more threatening at this point. And now we see that China is preparing for a conflict on its border. Seoul wants to build up its own arsenal, and we even have CBS News reporting that all major U.S. cities could now be in trouble. And this is another reason why I said that Russia is not the big story here. Russia is not what we all need to be concerned about. We need to be concerned about the fact that North Korea is becoming more and more of a threat. But CBS News is reporting North Korea tests missile that could threaten Los Angeles, Chicago, or New York. This coming out of Washington. North Korea launched another sophisticated missile on Friday, one that could potentially hit the mainland U.S. The rare late-night launch sent a ballistic missile into space. It remained airborne for more than 40 minutes, flying 1,000 kilometers due east before splashing onto the Sea of Japan. It was the second successful intercontinental ballistic missile test within the past month, and it flew longer and farther than any previous missile. Pentagon intelligence analysts have been surprised by the fast technical advances made by North Korea's weapons scientists. Recent North Korea propaganda videos have featured the U.S. Capitol in flames. Analysts believe that the missile launched Friday had the range to hit Los Angeles, Chicago, or even New York. It is unclear how close North Korea is to being able to arm a missile with a nuclear warhead, but clearly they are prepared for such a thing, as they are constantly shooting off missiles more and more. Now, this is nothing new. I mean, North Korea continues to do this. They did this before this administration as well. So it's nothing new, and in my opinion, it's not something that's going to die down. But nevertheless, it's becoming more of a threat. And because the distraction has become Russia, the real question of what is Trump going to do about North Korea continues to loom. His diplomacy with China has seemingly not worked, although they did say they were going to do something about it, and nothing has been done. Now, does that mean that they don't control North Korea as well as they said they did? I mean, because China claimed that that they had a foothold over North Korea, that they had the ability or their thumb on that dictator. Clearly, that's not the case, as now they themselves are wanting to build up their border forces so that they are protected in what they feel is an oncoming conflict at their border. So North Korea is like a rabid dog running around doing whatever they want to do. Our great ally in South Korea is directly threatened by this. Our diplomacy in China is not working. These are the issues that Trump really needs to be focusing on, along with his continued push for peace in the Middle East, which he's also successfully started as well. But yet he has to continue to deal with the issue at home. And the Republicans in Congress, the Democrats wanting a coup against him, and the Russia collusion garbage, which is being continued by Robert Mueller. Now, I have a couple of videos to go through, and also want to talk about who has replaced Reince Priebus, because he is out. Scaramucci came in. Sean Spicer has resigned. We saw the Assistant Chief of Staff resigned. We mentioned that earlier. And now we are bringing in a general as Chief of Staff, General Kelley. Now, for some people, this is good news. Of course, Trump has been talking about how much he likes General Kelley for some time, but John Kelley, new Chief of Staff, is seen as beacon of discipline. This comes from the New York Times. President Trump frequently referred to John F. Kelley as one of my generals, the 3 senior military leaders he recruited for his team. On Friday, Mr. Trump decided to see whether Mr. Kelley, a retired 4-star Marine Corps general, could impose a new sense of discipline on an unruly, chaotic West Wing. Kelley, who became a star in Mr. Trump's eyes for overseeing immigration policy as Homeland Security, will become the president's second chief of staff. He replaces Reince Priebus, the establishment Republican who never completely meshed with Mr. Trump. Priebus was ousted after a nasty public feud with Anthony Scaramucci, the new White House communications director. The question is, will Steve Bannon be next now that Scaramucci has gone after Reince Priebus? I think the important thing to keep in mind there is the fact that Reince Priebus was already the second chief of staff, and now we are on our 3rd chief of staff. We are still within the first year of Trump's administration. It's getting a little ridiculous. It's getting a little chaotic, and that's what I was saying earlier, is that it's a little sad. Of course, I want Trump to do well. I want him to be able to implement his agenda, but the question is, like I've said, who is the right person to help him do this? Because clearly, he can't seem to find a grounded person outside of the establishment who can give him good advice, proper advice, and be able to also handle the onslaught from the media. The square-jawed Mr. Kelley, the first general to hold the chief of staff position since Alexander M. Haig during the Nixon administration, will be an imposing and straight-laced figure in a West Wing filled with constantly warring aides and advisors, most of whom came to Washington with virtually no experience in federal government before Mr. Trump's victory last year. Quote, John has also done a spectacular job as Homeland Security, Trump wrote on Twitter, and Kelley is a great American and saying he had been a true star of my administration. So we'll see what this means. Of course, we're only days into this thing. I don't really have anything against General Kelley. So we'll just have to see what happens. I mean, I think it's once again, I don't know how long he was deliberating over this decision. It seems, again, like an off-the-hip type of appointment. But we have to continue to think that Trump is trying to get closer to having a grounded administration, and maybe this is a step in the right direction. Now, I have a couple of videos here just to play from this week, which go to show not only the chaos that's taken place this week, but also some information from Priebus himself, because he's been giving a lot of interviews over the past week, which, like I said, I think they all have their own agenda. I am sure that Reince Priebus will end up with his own book deal, but he is on CNN here with Wolfie Blitzer, giving his first general
from the White
interview.
House. First of all, I've got a lot of questions for you, but how are you doing right now?
I'm doing great. I just had a good conversation with General Kelley and the President, and I think you may know I've been obviously talking to the President for a few days about this, and ultimately I formally resigned yesterday. And, you know, the President was great. He wanted to include me in figuring out how and who would be a great successor and a good chief of staff. I think General Kelley's a brilliant pick. And I just, like I said, talked to him, talked to the President. We'll be working on a transition here for a couple of weeks together with General Kelley, starting on Monday morning. So this is not like a situation where there's a bunch of ill will feelings. This is, I think, good for the President. I think it's smart for him to pick General Kelley, and I think that things are going to be run very well.
You say you resigned yesterday. Tell us why. Why did you make that important decision to resign?
Well, it wasn't. It was something that I've always talked to the President about, which is, and I've always said to him, and he always agreed with me. Anytime either one of us think that we need to make a change or move in a different direction, let's just talk about it and get it done. And so I think the President thought about that, and we talked about it yesterday, and I resigned, and he accepted my resignation. But this is about the president. It's about moving his agenda forward. I think he's made a smart decision with General Kelley, and I think he's going to do a great job. And I'm looking forward to the future. One other thing. I'm always going to be a Trump fan. I'm on Team Trump, and I look forward to helping him achieve his goals and his agenda for the American people.
But why did you resign? I'm still trying to understand. I understand that you told the president you wanted to resign. He accepted your resignation yesterday. But why? What were there a series of issues, or was there one thing that came up and and you decided, listen, you know what, I no longer can do this?
No, look, I think the president wanted to go to a different direction. I support him in that. And like I said a couple weeks ago, I said the president has a right to change directions. The president has a right to hit a reset button. I think it's a good time to hit the reset button. I think he was right to hit the reset button, and I think that it was something that I think the White House needs. I think it's healthy, and I support him in it.
Was he not happy with the direction you were setting?
No, but look, I mean, I think bringing fresh face, I think bringing fresh people is a good thing. So, look, he has the best political instincts. Hang on a second. Yeah. He knows, I think, intuitively when things need to change. I've seen it now for a year and a half on this wild ride with the president that I loved being a part of. But he intuitively determined that it was time to do something differently, and I think he's right.
But it's only been 6 months, not very long. When you say he wanted to do things differently, tell us precisely what he said to you, why he wants to do things differently, and why you concluded that didn't include you.
No, look, I'm not going to get into that personal stuff. The president is a professional, and I'm a professional, and professional people don't discuss private conversations in public. But what I will tell you is this president has the hearts of all Americans at the top of his mind at all times. He wants to do what's right for the American people.
I think that's enough.
And I think making changes in the White House is...
but that's not the only video. I have several. And like I said, I think this goes to show that there is some chaos in the Trump administration. Priebus has always been an establishment troll. I think he's interested in preserving his own image. And so, of course, he's going to come out to Wolf Blitzer and talk about how much confidence he has in Trump. I mean, I'm glad he's still behind Trump. I'm glad he didn't come out bashing him. I didn't expect him to do that. But by him being so cool-headed about it, I think it puts more of the pressure on Donald Trump. So it seems like a strategic interview that he gave there. New York Times columnist David Brooks says that Priebus was simply not given a chance, which I also think is an interesting take. Of course, he wasn't given much time, but coming from the New York Times, I think that goes to show that Priebus himself
it's been another head-turning week in Washington, from the Republican failure on health care to the president's surprising statement on transgender military members, and a flurry of profanity from the new White House communications director. And then to cap it off, today's announcement from Mr. Trump that he's changing his chief of staff. Here to help make sense of it all, Shields and Brooks, that's syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks. So I thought we had a lot of things to talk about, David, before about an hour ago we learned that the president was changing his chief of staff. Is this, I guess we knew that this might happen. Reince Priebus has been in trouble with this president, we think, for a while. But what do you think?
Well, he was never given the chance to do the job. Every other chief of staff we've ever seen has sort of controls the schedule. They control the tempo in the White House. They're the alter ego of the president. They're given some clear sign of respect that they speak for the president. And Priebus never had that. And so he was wounded and stabbed. Before Scaramucci came along, he was stabbed by like a piñata. And so he was sort of a pathetic figure hanging out there. And so this doesn't come as a total surprise, except for maybe the timing. As for General Kelley taking the job, I sort of question his sanity there. He's been a loyalist, but I really, with all due respect to the Marine Corps, I don't see how someone who's been trained in a pretty orderly chain of command is going to survive this mess. If he can control the schedule, it would be one thing. I just don't think that's going to happen, given all the independent power figures all around him.
What do you make of it? Priebus out and Kelley in.
Judy, I am continually amazed that it's not simply a matter of human decency or empathy when a boss is firing anybody to make sure that that person leaves and has a soft landing, that they can leave with their self-respect, that they can leave with some place to go to, with a plausible explanation to their family and friends that they weren't humiliated, abused, and derided. This president treats staff and others like a used sickness bag on a bad airplane flight.
So once again, you can see here, I think this is enough of that. Of respect. You can see how they are using this opportunity to bash Trump, saying that he doesn't know what he's doing, and that's why Priebus was taken out. I mean, in my opinion, Priebus was an establishment member anyway, so I didn't like him to begin with. I'm glad that Trump has picked a new person. I just don't know if General Kelley is the right person or not. I think he will have the interest of growing the military, which was part of Trump's campaign. But again, military spending doesn't simply solve all of our problems. We also have Tucker Carlson saying that Priebus' White House was chaos, and that it was never a good thing. It was, in fact, always the worst thing. And so Tucker agreeing that a change-up in Chief of Staff is a good idea. This came from Friday, his Friday night show as well. He opened by reacting to the new position of John Kelley. And that's really the thing here. We see a lot of chaos from the Trump administration. I mean, as much good as he's been able to do, there has been a lot of chaos in general. And so what we need to see is a settling down from Trump. But take a listen here to
well, good evening and welcome to Tucker
Carlson.
Carlson tonight. We just landed from El Salvador. Pretty short flight, no Wi-Fi, one of those weird moments when you're totally out of touch. By the time we landed, things seemed to have changed dramatically in Washington. It was at least the fourth day in a row that has happened, where all of a sudden everything you thought you knew about politics in D.C. changed in just an instant. This time, of course, it was the news that the White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, was out to be replaced by General Kelley of the Department of Homeland Security. The president first announced this change in a tweet, saying this, quote, "I'm pleased to inform you that I have just named General Secretary John F. Kelley as White House Chief of Staff. He is a great American and a great leader. John has also done a spectacular job at Homeland Security. He's been a true star of my administration." The president then made this statement.
Reince is a good man. John Kelley will do a fantastic job. General Kelley has been a star, done an incredible job thus far, respected by everybody. A great, great American. Reince Priebus, a good man. Thank you very much.
Will Kelley make an effective chief of staff? Everyone's hoping for it, but that may be less important right now than the perception that he'll bring stability and order to the place. The White House needs that more than anything at the moment. The most powerful branch of the world's most powerful government seemed to devolve this week to a state of nature, a war of all against all. It was chaos for a minute, and chaos is always the worst thing. People need order and continuity. They need to believe that the world they'll wake up to tomorrow will bear some resemblance to the one they're living in right now. When they begin to doubt that, they become anxious and crazy, and things begin to fall apart. You've seen it all over the world, and that's the last thing we need here. Our political system is fragile enough. Bad things could happen. If you can't feel that, you haven't been living here. So let's hope the upswing begins with General Kelley this afternoon.
And I agree with that take.
Political anchor and special report host
frankly,
Brett Baer
I think that there is
Brett, how did
a
this
lot
happen?
to be said for what Trump has accomplished. But also a lot to be said for the fact that there needs to be some continuity of government at this point. And the Republicans, of course,